Our next speaker is Pat Elder. He is the director of the National Coalition to Protest Student Privacy, to protect student privacy. That would be a very different. A group dedicated to halting the military incursion into U.S. high schools, and also serves on the coordination committee of the National Network Opposing the Militarization of Youth. He is also an author of a soon-to-be published book on military recruiting in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Brianne. I love you all. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me. Countering military recruitment in the nation's high schools confronts an ugly mix of a distinctively American brand of institutionalized violence, racism, militarism, nationalism, classism, and sexism. It confronts the greatest problems in American society. I'll spend a few minutes on the despicable public policy involving tens of thousands of American government employees, both in and out of active duty, whose job it is to persuade high school children to enlist in the armed services. It is extraordinarily deceptive and reprehensible psychological pursuit. Then I'll discuss the military's vulnerabilities in this realm and ways that you can and should exploit them. Why should we be concerned with military recruiters chilling with kids in the high school cafeteria? Well, for starters, it's not a volunteer force. It's a recruited force. These statistics are never mentioned in the corporate military media. Listen to this. 40% of Army enlistees never complete their first term. Imagine for a moment the emotional suffering endured by those who really don't volunteer in the first place. There were more than 20,000 deserters in the United States Army alone from the period of 2006 to 2014, and that's only half of our active service. Half of 770,000 active duty soldiers who were polled 2 years ago said they have little satisfaction in or commitment to their jobs. This is a travesty. Musculoskeletal injuries in the military result in 2.2 million medical encounters a year. Now, talk about pain. Nearly half of the 1.6 million veterans of the United States wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have filed injury claims. Military suicides are at an all-time high, or at least close to it. And sexual assaults are also near record levels in the military, despite a propaganda campaign to try to convince you otherwise. Now consider DD Form 4. Man, these guys they've got acronyms and numbers for everything. It's the military's enlistment agreement. And it says, laws and regulations that govern military personnel may change without notice to me. Such changes may accept my status, my pay, allowances, benefits, and responsibilities as a member of the armed forces, regardless of the provisions of this enlistment agreement. What in the hell are we allowing to happen here? It's an outrage. These poor kids, they're screwed. They're red meat for the corporate and military carnivores who produce contracts they can't understand, contracts that go on to rule their lives. High schools teach Chaucer rather than crucial life skills. The Pentagon's greatest asset in the schools is the JROTC program. JROTC, the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. We've all heard of ROTC. They've got a junior component to it. Over 500,000 children, an all-time high, are indoctrinated into military culture in the high schools. 40% who complete the program enlist in the armed services. JROTC is the center of military intelligence gathering in the high schools. The Pentagon embraces the seductive power of the trigger as a recruiting device. Our greatest mass murderers play video games, and the video games desensitize them to murder. And that's exactly what the Pentagon is doing. The Pentagon is using video games to desensitize youth, to teach them to kill. And they're doing it through our schools, and they're doing it through recruitment offices, and they're doing it through an America's Army video game, which is one of the most popular games in the world because it's free. It's rated teen blood violence, and it's sponsored by your government. And most of us allow it to happen, I think, because we don't know it's happening. 2,400 high schools have marksmanship programs. They allow shooting, and they're affiliated with the JROTC program and the congressionally chartered civilian marksmanship program. The kids regularly attend tournaments sponsored by the NRA. Schools allow shooting to occur during school hours in classrooms and gyms that are contaminated by lead fragments fired from CO2 rifles that become airborne and are deposited on the floor and at the muzzle end and the target backstop. Kids track the lead throughout the school. Custodians sweep the lethal material. Loose enforcement of these regulations creates a health hazard for students and custodial staff. JROTC guns fire a .177 caliber projectile, compared to a .22. It goes 500 feet per second. Shot at the eye, it'll go halfway through the human brain. It's a lethal weapon, and the Army categorizes it as a lethal weapon. They're fired in classrooms here in the District of Columbia, in Fairfax County, and in Montgomery County. In classrooms. And then they break for class and new kids come in. And they're fired in gyms regularly. That's just the firing. The textbooks, JROTC textbook, teach a reactionary brand of U.S. history and government, while classes are often taught by military retirees with no college education. We had to bomb Hiroshima. It saved 1 million American lives. They haven't been reading Gar Alperovitz or Peter Kuznick, apparently. We helped Cuba gain their independence. Come on, this is 500,000 kids are being taught this. The CIA, quote, partook in the overthrowing of the government of Salvador Allende. The United States government thought Allende was not favorable to our national interest. This is what they're teaching ninth graders. It's accurate. Okay, Gulf of Tonkin, those damn North Vietnamese. The U.S. set up a democracy in South Korea after World War II. You get the idea. Make America great again. Sorry. The unit on citizenship is entitled, You the People. I'm not making this up. I learned We the People, but this is the military teaching our kids civics, and so they call their unit You the People. You the people. Get in line. Why are we allowing this? I think it's because most of us don't know what's going on. The most sought-after data the military extracts from the schools pertains to a child's cognitive abilities. It's the data the Pentagon can't purchase outright or find online. And it is gained through the deceptive administration of the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, ASVAB, to 700,000 kids in 12,000 high schools every year. The ASVAB is a 3-hour enlistment exam masquerading as a career exploration program, and it tests a child's verbal and math abilities along with knowledge of general science, electronics, auto, and shop. The recruiters are calling these kids up after they take this test and say, dude, you did really good on the battery stuff. I got a job for you. ASVAB results are the only student information leaving America's classrooms without parental consent, a violation of FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. ASVAB data is so valuable because it allows the Pentagon to analyze a child's cognitive abilities, something that they can't buy and they can't find online. They can't find it on Facebook. I mean, these guys are good. They know that a guy's girlfriend doesn't want him to join. Okay? They know everything about these kids. Now they know if they can do polynomials or not. Okay? Appeal to... Okay, now that's the first half. The second half of what I have to say deals with how, what you can do. You can go to our website, studentprivacy.org, for starters. You can also go to the website of the National Network Opposing the Militarization of Youth, which is NOMY, NNOMY.org. And then also Project YANO, YANO, which is Youth and Non-Military Opportunities. But in a nutshell, you gotta appeal to moderate and progressive school board members and state legislators regarding these issues. Demand your school adhere to the specifics of the opt-out legislation codified in the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. Basically, the law says recruiters gets the names, addresses, phone numbers of kids from a school, although parents have the right to request that their kids' info not be sent. High schools are supposed to tell parents, but most don't, or they bury the information. Maryland, thanks to a group of activists in Montgomery County, has the only law that requires parents to sign a form that asks parents if they want to allow info on their kid going to the recruiters, and of course most Marylanders say no. It's the only law like that in the country. We ought to duplicate it around the country. ESSA 8025 also says military recruiters are supposed to have the same access to kids as college recruiters, not greater access. Typically, military recruiters eat in the cafeteria, while college recruiters meet with select kids in the guidance office. Military recruiters also perform dozens of volunteer tasks in the school. Demand that military recruiters never be allowed to be alone with kids. There have been too many rapes. A 17-year-old child, Michelle Miller, was murdered by a recruiter in Montgomery County, close to here. Demand that counter-recruiters have access to students. The Ninth Circuit, California, says counter-recruiters have a right to offer opposing views. Contact your principal or your school board, regardless of whether you have a kid in school. These are your schools, man. You know, when you're out there protesting and they say, whose streets? Our streets? Well, whose schools? Our schools. That's right, they're our schools. Contact your principal and school board to make sure that student information is not released to recruiters gained through the administration of the ASVAB. In order to prevent the information from automatically being sent to recruiters, your school must tell the military in advance that ASVAB release option 8 must be used for all students who are tested. Option 8 means the military can't use the result to recruit kids. Schools select release options. Maryland passed a law 5 years ago through our activism that makes it so that parents are given the right to give consent. They can't use information they use from the ASVAB in the state of Maryland to recruit kids. That's good. New Hampshire just passed a law, and Hawaii has as well. Make sure that ASVAB testing is voluntary. The Pentagon says it's always voluntary, but a FOIA reveals, and I've been, requesting FOIAs for 8 years in a row now, but there are 6 schools in inner city Miami, each with more than 500 minority kids who make the kids take the ASVAB. Check out the content of JROTC textbooks. Compare them with the regular textbooks. Make a fuss over the qualifications of JROTC instructors. They only need a high school education. In Montgomery County, Maryland, and Fairfax County in Washington, D.C., you got to have a master's after a couple years. Where are the unions? Make a fuss over that. Demand that closure of marksmanship programs. Check out, get a lead sample. Check out to see if there's lead all around. Get counter-recruitment information into the schools. Go to NOMI, go to Project Yano, and get this information. Wherever the military information is, get this information. It's truth-based. Stop students from being placed in JROTC programs automatically. What in the hell? Request that JROTC enrollment statistics are given to you, and if they fall under 100 for 2 years in a row, federal law says they have to be closed. Document the lies on your JROTC textbooks, and make sure that recruiters are not regularly occupying guidance offices and that they are not allowed to be coaches, etc. And finally, if a kid is enrolled in the delayed entry program, and 99% of them are who enlist, tell them not to report the boot camp. And tell them to check out Center on Conscience and War or check out the GI Rights Hotline to find out more information about that. Thank you very much.